Okay, I hope you're ready for some listener questions, everybody, because this is what we're about to do now. And it's been a while since we've had some listener questions. I can't remember, it's been months since we've done this. At least back in early summer, I think. But we've been collecting some more up since then, and we're going to answer 2 or 3 for you right now.
It's like Prime Minister's question time. I feel like Theresa May. I'm going to do a seal laugh.
I don't know enough about politics to make any joke about that.
You know who the Prime Minister is,
I
though?
do know who Theresa May is, yes. Right, Miranda, we go at your question first, and kind of an interesting one here that I don't know whether we're going to be able to get to a definite answer
This is difficult to answer.
In our position, but we'll have a go, we'll give it a crack, and we'll see what other people think as well. She says, why do you think that Coronation Street is so popular in Canada?
I thought it's the only show that they aired in Canada.
Apparently
That's
not,
what I thought was going on there.
She says that she's Canadian, of course, and we have a huge following for it here. Several actors have even come over and done tours where they speak about their experiences working on Coronation Street to Canadian audiences. Most Canadians have lost touch with our British roots as we are ever shifting to a very diverse, multicultural country, and yet the Corrie fans here are very passionate and often lifelong viewers.
You sounded like you said fashionate, like they were fascist, but you passionate.
Passionate, no,
yeah.
Fashionable. It's funny because I think probably most viewers in the UK don't realise that it's big in Canada at all.
We had no idea when we first started. It took us by complete surprise when we first began the podcast.
Literally, we'd done the first few episodes, the first episode of the podcast, expecting to only get a British audience because who else would watch Coronation Street? And I never used to go on very many Coronation Street websites or anything or blogs to find out that it was so big in Canada. But so when we got our emails back from our first email from Tibor and some of the other Canadian fans, we were quite surprised by it. So let's have a little bit of a history lesson first.
And now we can go around telling everyone like we're experts about how popular it is in Canada, and everyone else is surprised too. One of my friends works with a Canadian in her laboratory, and she was like going to me, "Oh, did you know that it's really popular in Canada?" I was like, "Yes, I did."
Everybody knows that. Yeah, a little bit of history first. So, in case you don't know, Coronation Street was first shown in Canada in the late 1960s on CBC. So, I don't know how many, 5, 6, 7 years or so after it started here in the UK. And they just were buying bulk loads of episodes to show over there. In fact, in the 2002 Guinness World Records books, it's recognised that the 1,144 episodes of Coronation Street that were sold to CBC in 1971 were the largest number of episodes of a single show purchased at once. Which I think is quite a cool record.
I wonder how many shows even have 1,144 episodes to buy at once.
Exactly.
Especially in 1971.
I don't know. I don't know whether this could ever be topped unless they suddenly decide to, I don't know, sell the whole of Coronation Street as it is at the moment to a foreign market and just like give them the rights to everything. Who knows? Anyway, Canadian Coronation Street used to always be very far behind the UK. In the 1990s and early 2000s, they even skipped over a lot of episodes, which must have been incredibly frustrating.
And very confusing.
Yeah.
Especially when you didn't have the internet to find out what's going on.
Exactly. I suppose in the early 90s they didn't, yeah.
Well,
lots of episodes were skipped over and people, were unhappy.
Do you remember when we were at school and like we were behind in Neighbours by about 2 years? I remember that happening, and we didn't really have... We did have the internet, but it wasn't something that I would ever think of to use to look stuff up like this. And I remember hearing rumours about what weird stuff was going on in Neighbours. I was like, that's never going to happen.
And that must have been so annoying. Anyway, now, of course, it's a very different situation over on CBC. They show 6 episodes a week, Monday to Friday, and now they are just a couple of weeks behind the UK. I think this week they've just been having the end of the wedding saga, and they might have even had some of the Michelle and Will stuff
yes.
on today's episode. I don't know. Anyway, apparently in Canada they get around 700,000 viewers per episode, so that's still about a tenth of the UK audience. But there aren't as many Canadians over
there are not
as there are British people. It is the second biggest soap in Canada after. Have you heard of this? The Young and the Restless.
Yes.
Have you?
Yes, of course I have.
Oh, I haven't. Anyway, that's an American soap. I mean, the biggest regular TV shows in Canada get between 2.5 million viewers per episode, as far as I can tell. So Coronation Street is not anywhere close to the top 10 biggest shows in Canada, but it has still got this big cult following. And I think if you like Coronation Street in Canada, you're a big Coronation Street nerd about it, as far as I can tell from from this side of the pond. I mean, they have these pings, don't they, that Canadian fans go to meet at. These the little meetups where they have Coronation Street quizzes and everything. There's meet and greets with the fans, as Miranda said, like Chris Gascoigne was over there earlier this year, and they have thousands of fans go along to that. They have trips that get organised every year to bring Canadian fans over to the UK to go on coach tours around Manchester. And not only that, but they're able to get them behind the scenes tours of the sets and meeting some of the cast. Quite a lot of things that, as a British Coronation Street fan, we can't get to happen. I mean, there's no meet and greets for present day Coronation Street stars here, is there?
No, you can't. You can't get that kind of access, really.
I couldn't really imagine that something like that would be successful here.
I can't imagine people being that bothered.
I can't imagine a room full of 1,000 screaming British Coronation Street fans and Chris Gascoigne coming up on the stage and everybody throwing their pants at him or anything. We don't view Coronation Street in quite the same way. We've got a different relationship because it's not got a cult status over here. It's kind of traditional.
It's just normal.
It's everyday.
So can I just say what I've been looking at, which is the population?
Oh, go on then.
So Canada's about 35 million, and we've got 65 million, but that's the whole of the United Kingdom. So it's got 1/10 of the audience. So if it was the same popularity, it would be half of the audience, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I guess.
So it's not as popular in Canada as it is in the UK.
No.
But the people that like it really like it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about cult programs,
yes,
isn't it?
You join a cult and you can't leave.
They should this should be this should be a subplot of the American Horror Story series on at the moment, because they're doing American Horror Story cult, aren't they? Coronation Street fans, yeah.
Does that make us cult leaders?
Oh yeah, obviously we are, yeah. Canadian Coronation Street fans just seem really, really dedicated and invested into it, and for over here, although it's a big programme and it's one of the biggest shows on British TV, but it doesn't top the ratings anymore like it used to. Things like X Factor and all that get more, don't they?
It's kind of a bit of a joke in a way, in that people don't take it seriously.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, as a British institution, but it's also very throwaway entertainment. It's
there was a really good post. There was a really good post. I can't remember which newspaper did it. It might have been The Guardian or something, or The Telegraph, earlier this week or last week, that was saying that British soap stars don't get anywhere near the recognition that they deserve when they're alive. I mean, I think it was in the wake of Liz Dawn's death last week. People were saying, everyone's saying how amazing she was and what a fantastic actress and everything. But back when she was alive,
no one cared.
No, I mean, you get your soap awards and everything, and on the front of the magazines.
But the fact
and everything,
is that those are soap awards, because you don't the BAFTAs don't care.
Yeah.
It's still acting though.
Yeah. Last little stat, which people might find interesting, is that 44% last month of our downloads. The last 3 months, came from Canada. So nearly a half of the people that listen to our podcast, as far as we can trust the statistics on podbean.com, nearly half of the listeners are Canadian, and 30% are from the UK, 18% are from the US, and I don't know what number that leaves us that come from elsewhere.
So 70% of the people who listen, and 65% are from the
other side of the Atlantic,
American continent.
Exactly. But why is it so popular in Canada?
Why are we so popular? That is the question. I think it is just because you're all fooled by the accent.
I did a little bit of research to try and find some answers to it, and there weren't any really, but I found a couple of blogs, and I know this isn't really me or you answering the question, it's just kind of saying what other people think. But
we're not Canadian, so we can't really say.
Yeah, it's really difficult to give our own perspective.
I don't want to put words in people's
mouths
because I'll get myself in trouble.
Yeah, we can say, it's because you're really weird.
But I would say that I think it's a sort of similar phenomenon that happens. Could you drink that louder? Or
just having a really loud drink of my lemonade here.
Yeah, shut up. we get the same kind of thing. There are people that are into shows from abroad because they just like something that's a bit
Taste of
exotic.
the exotic, yeah.
And
Except
that's why
it's quite funny that the people would see Coronation Street as being a bit of the exotic because it's
like,
clearly just grim up north.
It's like, would Harry Potter has been as popular if it had been set in America? Because a lot of the stuff that Americans seem to like about it is that it's British.
Well, there are I think, I don't know whether this is completely true or not. I imagine it is. The biggest Harry Potter conventions and gatherings and everything are over in America.
Whereas here, magic is normal, so we don't.
Yeah, we're just used to it. Yeah. So anyway, I'll read about some of these blogs that I found. So.
Are you saying do you mean blogs or do you mean...
Some of the blogs, some of them are articles, but
right.
It's all online
stuff.
So John Doyle from the Globe and Mail in 2012, he said that viewers are addicted, junkies hooked on this one show and nothing else matters. He says that he doesn't think that it's believable characters or anything that they are into because he says...
It doesn't have that.
It's not really believable characters. It's not about real people and real situations anymore. So I don't know. He's saying that Canadians who might say, "I like it because it's so down to earth." He says,
they're lying.
No, it's not. Yeah, he says it's a peculiar mix of the familiar and the exotic. So
I think that is. I mean, that's kind of like what Harry Potter's like, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Coronation Street is Harry Potter.
Well, I like both of those things, so it's no wonder, really.
Interesting.
So he didn't really seem to have much of an answer. There was an article on the Manchester Evening News just earlier this year written by Katie Fitzpatrick. There was a quote from somebody called Jackie Butler. I don't know, does Jackie listen to the podcast? Say hello if you do.
Corrie _ Canada.
She says that Canada's fascination with Corrie comes in part from our strong affiliation and affection for the UK. I believe initially Corrie's popularity was that people could relate more to real life storylines as opposed to many American soaps aired here.
Yeah, so the guy before was saying, this is not real life, what are you talking about? But actually, if you've only got American soaps to pick from, then actually this is far more realistic than anything.
Yeah,
we've had people write in before and say that.
Yeah, I don't believe that there's anything quite like Coronation Street that gets made in America, and I don't think there's any Canadian produced soaps.
Don't you
correct
think
me
it's
if I'm
really
wrong,
weird that soaps seem to be so particular to each country? Because Coronation Street is like the most successful serial drama ever, but nobody's really tried to copy it. Properly copy it.
What, abroad?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they have. I mean,
it's like the Americans went, oh, that's a good idea, but what about if we put more shoulder pads in it? And twins that kill each other.
And Australians are like, that's a good idea, but let's have them go to the beach all the time.
Yeah.
I think, I've never watched Neighbours or Home and Away, but you do get the... Australian soaps do have a bit of a different feeling to British soaps, don't they?
Yeah, but I think they're more similar.
Are they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know about like European soaps or anything, but there is a certain kind of...
They're all foreign, aren't they?
There's a certain kind
like
of
Australian
real quality
that
that English soaps have got, and they reckoned in this article that it was to do with that. There was a blog that I found called Love in a Cold Climate.
You've missed out expats that Stella Booth says it provides her with a sense of home. And so she likes the balance of drama and humour. Yeah,
so there is the expats and the family are passing it down. There was an article on a blog called Love in a Cold Climate that was written in 2012. Sorry, I didn't get the writer of this one down. But she made a bit of a bullet-pointed list of why she thinks that Coronation Street was so big in Canada. She says that the storylines are as addictive as crack and move quickly. The characters are extremely relatable and identifiable as opposed to the aspirational American soaps.
Nobody aspires to be Fizz pining over a sink and worrying about trying to make handkerchiefs for kids with cancer.
Yeah, she says the setting is a real place that humans live. The community is important.
And woodlice.
Yes, can't forget those woodlice. The men are handsome in an everyday way.
Oh, that's a burn for Daniel, isn't it? That quiff is not an everyday quiff.
It mixes the sensational with the mundane, it's tradition, and apparently the soundtrack is Adele on repeat. I can't say
not
I've
at the
noticed
moment.
that.
Maybe in 2012 it was.
Yeah. I just don't know whether there's an answer to it, really, as much as we've waffled on about it and not what?
I just think it's because Canada and the UK have got a link to each other. and we share a common language and a culture, and it's a bit different. And so if you're into it, you've got to seek it out. It's not as easy to get it as it is here. So you've got to be a dedicated fan. So it weeds out all the casuals.
I think the thing with cult programs is that people don't. If you're into a program, you don't really stop being into it, do you? If you like the real cult programs, like you get your cult Doctor Who fans and your cult.
Right. Yeah. And people that just watch it because it's on TV.
Yeah, and you get obsessed by it. So it's less likely that you're going to drop it, and then you'll be passing it on to your children and grandchildren or whatever. I
think there's something to be said about something not being that accessible. It makes you want to have it more. If you know it's something you're missing out on, and there's more to the experience that you can't quite grasp, you're continually hungry for more of it. That's why you have people wanting to come over to see Manchester, doing a tour of the sets and meeting the actors, because it's like, it's rare, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas, like, you can go to Manchester whenever you want. Here.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I wonder if other countries got hold of Coronation Street, whether they'd be into it.
Well, Americans don't seem to be interested.
Not as much. So I guess, like, the expat thing is important in a way,
yes.
and it gets passed down through. My parents watched it. My grandparents watched it. So it's a decree. So no, we kind of got some answers to it, but maybe it's just one of those little mysteries.
Write in and tell us.
Yeah, I mean, 44% of people listening to this apparently are Canadian, so if you think you've got any better reasons about why it's so popular, do let us know. Do you want to do the next question?
Jane's got a bee in her bonnet. She said, why do the writers include highly improbable, impossible events in the storylines? Just 2 examples are Toya locking a hotel washroom door from the outside to keep Maria away, and Eva purchasing a couture wedding gown days before the event. Do you think it's laziness, or are they just trying to keep viewers on their toes?
So this is quite a thing in soaps, isn't it?
Yeah, and John is also
being accepting of improbable, impossible events. Yeah, this. I put another email in from John here. He emailed just for the normal feedback section, but it linked in quite nicely. He said that he recently read the comments section in the Daily Mail.
Don't read the comments section of the Daily Mail. What's
on
wrong
an
with
article about upcoming Corrie storylines, and after taking a few minutes to restore my faith in humanity, I noticed most of the criticisms are about how Corrie is so unrealistic these days. I agree with Gemma that soaps are fictional, and suspending disbelief and enjoying a bit of outlandishness is part of the fun.
Yeah.
Having said that, though, Phelan's elaborate fake accident. Oh, excuse me, that was a real
that's horrible.
Burp.
Why?
Sorry. Gross.
We've lost 44%.
Phelan's elaborate.
That's horrible.
Sorry, it's fine.
You knew that was coming.
I didn't. It just came out of nowhere. Came out of nowhere.
Right, carry on.
Phelan's elaborate fake accident was a step too far.
Don't say that one again, because you burped.
Not knowing Corrie history, is it really more unrealistic now? And on another note, is stealing a roof a British thing?
Yes.
It's an annual
We
pilgrimage.
literally can't help ourselves if we're always pinching roofs. Actually, though I'm being sarcastic, at one point our neighbour did get all of his copper nicked off his roof, and I didn't even notice it happening.
Copper? Was it copper?
I think so.
We need roofs because it rains like all the time over here in England.
100% of the time.
So we need to have backup roofs.
We don't have a roof. Which is brilliant when people try to sell me solar panels and I say I don't have a roof. They get very confused. I don't know why. Because not everyone lives in a house.
So, unrealistic things in soaps, especially Coronation Street.
Just in case that sarcasm wasn't obvious, no, stealing a roof is ridiculous and it never happens, and I still don't know what happened there.
It was still a big shock, and
it was very shocking because you don't steal roofs.
I didn't mind it at the time because it was a brilliant end to that Wednesday episode.
It was a very good visual.
The fact that 2 weeks later there's still what's going on there
to the roof thing.
No, and Eva and Adam still seem to have got away with that, even though everybody kind of knows it was them.
In the writers' room, I just want to know when they got to that bit where they're like, and then they look up and the roof is missing, and everyone went, cool, and the writer's like, God, they didn't ask me anything about the roof because I didn't have the answers.
Just go with it.
Right.
There's even a thread on the Digital Spy forum, isn't there, called suspension of reality just for Coronation Street. So I don't know whether Coronation Street has got a particular reputation for being more
we can't really
unrealistic
compare
and
it
improbable to
other
other soaps.
soaps.
But
I mean it's very. It's got a much more. It's got a reputation as being a bit more of a comic, a bit more throwaway, a bit more maybe
it's
cartoonish.
light-hearted.
EastEnders is the gritty version of a soap.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Where Coronation Street is a bit more, has got more of the comedy, which is great. I think you can probably get away with the unlikely things or the silly things a little bit more.
It's like if Coronation Street and EastEnders were like seaside towns, yeah. Coronation Street would be like the Blackpool one, where there's bawdy postcards and people are going on fairground rides, and every so often somebody throws up their chips and it's a big drama. Whereas EastEnders would be the one where corpses keep washing up on the beach and everybody's walking around in the rain with their hands jammed in their coat pockets.
So, aside from this roof removal, then, what are some of the other improbable or unrealistic events that have happened so far, or so happened recently in Coronation Street?
Well, it seems as though one of the main recent sticking points is this Andy and Phelan thing.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
It is. Enough. Yeah, I agree. We'll say what we think about it in a minute. I think that the buzzer for mayor is silly and unrealistic, that somebody dressed in a bee suit would get so far as to having campaign speeches and being a good candidate for being a mayor.
Boaty McBoatface.
I know.
Taking the roof off doesn't make any sense. Toya spotting Maria in the window by coincidence, that was silly.
Oh yeah, the wedding.
Also thought that Mary suddenly finding her long lost son, that was very unrealistic.
Well, as was the fact that she then decided to get married to Norris out of nowhere. Bit weird. The Nicola, still doing it. Nicola coming out of nowhere and suddenly being Pat's long lost daughter.
Michelle finding Will's dog photos just because she happened to go over and want to change the CD.
There's quite a lot of things that happen and we're just meant to
Toya and Peter just finding a surrogate who's free that Sunday.
Yeah, and there's
Lots
also
of convenient things.
Yeah, I mean, there's also been something in the news this week as an upcoming spoiler for
a storyline for a character Wednesday.
Yeah, which seems a bit
silly.
Yeah,
but also just the general setting of the show is not realistic. Number one, nobody knows their neighbours
in real life. Everyone gets married about a million
murdered,
times now.
Accidents all happen in one street.
Everyone's got a job on the street.
This place would at the very least have speed bumps on it. Everyone works like 3 feet from their front door. Everyone dates with each other. No one seems to know anybody.
No.
They never use their phones to talk to one another. They have to go round there in person, even if it's just to say one sentence.
But there's also a lot of chance encounters, aren't there?
Yeah.
And, like people standing on corners watching
glancing,
things.
People seeing each other in the distance with somebody they're not supposed to be with.
Yeah, and everyone always happens to be listening in. Just
inexhaustible supply of money to spend at the bistro and the pub.
But,
the fact they've got a pub when everyone else's pub is closed.
At my school this week,
they've not got a Tesco Express. That's unrealistic.
At my school this week, one of the teachers was having a bit of a bitch about another teacher, and she happens to overhear it.
Just like a soap.
And this is the kind of thing that happens all the time in soaps. It happens sometimes in real life. It is very unfortunate for her. But soaps seems to happen all the time. So why do you think this happens, and do you mind it?
Well, they can only employ so many people, so that you can't have dating with all these random people. You have to hire actors and stuff.
I think there's some kind of you just kind of accept,
it's just the constraints
because
of the soap. Like
we understand that there are constraints, so we put up with it.
And shorthand for things, like I was saying about the scene when the fact that Nathan had a phone. How did he get a phone? It doesn't make any sense. But the storyline needed him to be able to communicate with Mel in a way that made him look like the powerful instigator. So that was the easy shorthand way of doing it. It wouldn't have been as impactful. A lot of the time, this is just you kind of have to do it. Otherwise, you'd be there explaining everything for half an hour, and you'd have to put in, and sometimes you'd have to write reams and reams of like really awkward things just to get to the same place.
Yeah.
And that would start to feel unbelievable.
Yeah, and there's only so much time you can set aside for these things now. There's so many people on the cast now, which means there's so many stories they got to have at once. You can't spend as long on the same stories you used to be able to, maybe. I mean, watching some of this classic Coronation Street on ITV3 this week, you could tell that it was a lot less sensationalist back then, because they had the luxury of like less competition.
Exactly.
And
That's
they could take their time on it. But these days,
everything
all soaps are fighting for
number one, they're fighting
ratings.
for a smaller share of the audience, and number two, they've got social media to tease, and they've got soap magazines and websites that they've got to titillate people. If you're not talking about a show, then there's probably always a concern that nobody's watching it. They've got to generate that discussion and that conversation to get people to watch it so they can sell their advertising and make money.
And viewers are kind of used to it now. I think if they decided suddenly, no, we're not going to be as sensationalist anymore, we're not going to have these unrealistic things happening. I mean, so, some of them is to keep you on your edge of your seat and to keep the stories moving along fast. And if they suddenly decided we're not going to be like that anymore, people might get a bit bored of it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Once you've upped the ante, you can't really go back on it.
Yeah,
you can't. Yeah, and they've also got competition from casual soap viewers, and not everybody watches every episode. A lot of people just flick around, especially also over special holidays like Christmas.
And they want people to flick around, see it, and see something
that catches their imagination.
Yeah, and go, oh, I'm going to carry on watching this.
Like, for example, I very vividly remember being at a family's house when the EastEnders storyline where somebody had gone mad and they were eating dog food out of a can. And everyone was talking about it, and I watched it because someone else wanted to watch it. If I was the sort of person who'd enjoy what people were eating dog food out of a can, I probably would have said, this show's great, I'm going to watch every episode from now to find out whether she's going to buy more Pedigree Chum or if she's going to buy a different brand next time.
The thing is, with a lot of these unrealistic things that happen, we might make a silly comment about it at the time, like, how did Nathan get a phone? Or, oh, isn't that lucky that Toya saw Maria in the window upstairs? But most of it, you kind of it doesn't stick in your mind for long, does it? You make a silly comment at the time and then you just buy into it and say, okay,
all right,
fine.
then, fine. And also,
okay, fine, Phelan's got Andy locked up in the cellar. Yeah, that's a little bit unrealistic, but let's go with it.
Also, like, every year we have our Bobbins Award where we say the stupidest storylines that we found were ridiculous. And they don't really stand the test of time. You don't remember them, and there's never like a huge amount. There's never anything really that bad. I mean, recent examples of things that I still can't believe they did that's ridiculous is Tim not being able to read.
I knew you would say that.
And Beth being married before she was married to Kurt. It's just like, why have you done that?
But at the end of the day, we just kind of accepted it because things have moved on. Things happen at such a pace.
If it comes into the service of a storyline that you're enjoying, then fine. But if it's something like Tim not being able to read, it's like, well, what? Sorry, but why did you put that in there? It wasn't interesting. It didn't really make any sense, and it didn't go anywhere. It
was for the shock factor at the time, but
that's the example of it done wrong, I think.
Yeah. I don't think it's to do with laziness particularly. I think some people might accuse it of saying, oh, you're just too lazy to think of a reason why these people would be meeting up. Isn't it contrived that they meet up? I don't think it's particularly that. It's being more concise. I think it's always possible to do it in a different way, but do you really want to sit down and watch somebody? It's like a detective show, isn't it? You don't watch them sitting down and going through everyone's statements and looking at a map and like going through emails and trying, hours of CCTV. They sit down, put the tape in. 5 minutes later, they found the person they're looking for. Yeah.
You don't want to sit through all the chaff.
You just want to get on with the next exciting plot point development. I mean,
we moan. We can't say that we don't moan about this.
I don't know whether the 6 episodes a week's gonna help make this any worse or any better, because if we're saying that part of the problem is time and they have to speed things up because they got so much to fit into the episodes, well, now they've got an extra half an hour a week to play around with, or 22, 23 minutes or however long it is, so they could afford to slow things down, but we haven't seen any of that so far.
Society's not slowing down, is it?
No.
Do you think it's worse than it used to be?
What, at being the unrealistic things happening?
I think one of the questions was, do you think it's worse than it used to be? Is it getting worse?
I don't think the unrealistic things are. I mean, Kate Oates is starting to develop a reputation in my mind for being a bit of a retconner and a bit of a stretch of
weird
the
coincidence. Everyone's related to each other.
Yeah, but as for the things like the chance meetings on the street and then people getting everyone works on the street and everything like that, I don't think it's any worse than it used to be particularly, and I don't really mind it. At the end of the day, I'd rather go ooh by something unexpected and exciting happening than just kind of be a bit bored by it taking it twice as long or more to get to that same end goal. Because I just forget about it in the end. I have a little moan at the time saying it's unrealistic, but then I soon gloss over it because the plot's moved on, which is what you want, really. Do you mind it?
I mean, I'm very vocal when I find it silly.
Yeah.
I don't think it's getting out of hand. I think there have been some very high profile things that people have complained about recently. But I think it's really hard to say because I'm enjoying it. I mean, I think between the two of us, we like the exciting drama. I think we like the sensationalist things that's the trouble.
More than other viewers do. I know
probably.
that Coronation Street is losing viewers, as are all the soaps eventually over time. And part of it, people are saying it's too sensationalist. It didn't used to be like this anymore. But
then
we
how
like
are you
it.
supposed
We like
to get
a good
people
villain.
in? How are you supposed to get people in when at the moment the thing is about at the moment is that television is becoming, people are investing a lot more money in television. Netflix is investing millions and millions of dollars into creating brand new shows for very small audiences. They never release viewing figures, and they don't seem to mind throwing away a load of money on a show that is really passionately loved by a very small amount of people. So when they're making shows for very specific groups of very small amounts of people, there's something for everybody out there, and Coronation Street is trying to be something for everyone, and it's impossible to do that. That's the hardest thing, to be a mainstream show in a world of entertainment that's becoming increasingly more fractured all the time.
You're very right. So I think
they've
overall,
they've got to try to get those headlines and grab them.
Yeah.
But at the
Overall,
same time, are they gonna keep going more? More outlandish.
This is the risk, isn't it?
Exactly. This is always what's going to happen. But they've got to go with the times. They've just got to not outpace our appetite for ridiculousness.
I've never watched not EastEnders. I've never watched American soaps, and they're the ones that have got the reputation. We were just saying in the previous question, they have a reputation of being completely unrealistic and outlandish, and like
very campy and
evil twins everywhere, and people going back to life and retconning all over the place, and so it is possible. So it's certainly possible that Coronation Street and other soaps could get that way if the people on top feel that so desperate that they need to get the viewers. Obviously, I hope they don't, but yeah, I don't think it will.
I think
Coronation Street is still grounded enough in reality that...
I also think that Corrie would be the last one to go if soaps started to decide that they were no longer relevant for audiences today. Because that's the other thing about soaps, is that they don't fit into the current consumer model of binge watching and saving up shows and watching them all at once, and they're not like on demand when you want to watch them as much as things like on Netflix. You have to invest a lot of your time. You can't really miss episodes. It's not like a 12 episodes and done like a lot of TV shows are now.
Yeah.
It's not got £1 million actors who've been in Hollywood movies. It's just it's essentially the same thing that has been on TV for decades.
Year in, year out, yeah.
So there we go. Those were our 2 questions.
We're
that
in
we
the future now.
answered.
This is new.
When did we answer these? Months.
This is episode 275. This is like half of our podcast life ago. We were answering these questions.
Do we know the answers any more now than we did then?
Any further answers to the mysteries of why Canadians like Coronation Street?
Why don't you let us know?
We just thought we'd do an ending for this because when we listened back to it this week, we realised it kind of stopped.
It just abruptly ends.
So here's a proper ending. We haven't got anything extra to add here.
There's no extra insight here, but thank you for
Absolutely
listening.
Not. Thank you, everybody, if you stayed to the bitter end.
And if you enjoy listening to these, there's loads of stuff you probably haven't already heard here.
Bet there is.
Right,
Go and have a look. Bye.